Hello guys, support Sanders the Great by subscribing and getting us to 1,000 subscribers. We truly appreciate the support. They told him NFL DBs wouldn't talk trash to a royal name, but when Buffalo's secondary stepped onto the Berea grass, they didn't just break his roots, they destroyed his reputation. Checkdown City roared across the field as veterans openly mocked every floating pass, every hesitant release, and every desperate check down from Shedeur Sanders. What was supposed to be a routine joint practice instantly turned into a viral public execution, exposing a fatal mechanical flaw that has rival defensive coordinators smelling blood in the water. The tape doesn't lie. Safeties are creeping into the box, daring him to throw deep, while his own coaching staff quietly questions if he can survive an NFL pass rush. With the Bears' disaster fresh in memory and an entire league building a blueprint to bait him into underneath traps, Shedeur is standing on the edge of a career-defining cliff. Silence the league right now, or remain permanently trapped in Checkdown City. The quiet tension of August training camp was obliterated in a single 11-on-11 sequence, transforming what should have been a standard iron-sharpening iron exercise into an absolute audio nightmare for the Cleveland Browns front office. Joint practices are traditionally a place for controlled intensity where teams work on specific situational football, but the Buffalo Bills defense arrived in Berea with zero intention of respecting the rookie quarterback's pedigree. As Shedeur lined up under center, taking his pre-snap reads under the blazing summer sun, the ambient noise of football cleats grinding into turf gave way to something far more visceral, relentless, demoralizing trash talk. Defensive backs didn't just break up passes, they began celebrating over the ball before it even arrived, recognizing the check-down trajectories almost as fast as Shedeur made his reads. The taunts escalated from typical competitive banter into an organized chorus, with Bills defenders loudly shouting "Checkdown City" after virtually every short dump off to a running back or flat route to a tight end. The phrase echoed off the practice facility sidelines, instantly picked up by media row and audio equipment set up to track the day's highlights. What made the situation so brutal was not merely the noise, but the indisputable reality backing it up. Beat reporters on site immediately began firing off live updates, corroborating the sensory overload and confirming that the taunts were fully earned. Eyewitness accounts from veteran local scribes and national insiders painted a grim picture. Shedeur appeared consistently rattled by the speed of Buffalo's underneath coverage, opting to take the safe 3-yard release rather than pushing the ball downfield into tight windows. Every time he hitched up in the pocket, hesitation crept into his drop back. Instead of letting a vertical route develop, he instinctively checked it down, feeding right into the traps Buffalo's secondary had set. Beat writers noted that the Bills safeties weren't even backpedaling into deep zones. They were hovering inside 10 yards, daring the young quarterback to throw over their heads. When he wouldn't or couldn't, the sidelines erupted, turning a private practice field into a public amphitheater of ridicule. Within minutes, the audio clips and live tweets metastasized across social media, spawning a viral trend that threatened to define Shedeur's entire professional trajectory before he ever took a regular season snap. The internet reacted with predatory swiftness. Clips of Bills players laughing, clapping, and chanting "Checkdown City" were clipped, looped, and disseminated across millions of screens. NFL fans and critics alike seized on the footage, interpreting it as definitive proof that Shedeur's collegiate arm strength and deep ball production were products of a system rather than high-end NFL traits. For a player who built his entire personal brand on confidence, poise, and primetime performance under extreme media scrutiny, the humiliation was stark. The spotlight that had elevated his college career was suddenly acting as a magnifying glass on his professional limitations, capturing every short completion not as a smart tactical choice, but as an act of quarterback self-preservation. The broader implications of the Berea incident go far beyond a single bad practice day. In the NFL, perception quickly becomes tactical reality. Opposing defensive coordinators watch social media clips just like fans do, but they analyze them through a cold, analytical lens. By exposing a clear hesitation to push the ball downfield during a joint practice, Buffalo essentially handed the rest of the league a pre-packaged blueprint on how to suffocatingly defend the Browns' offense when Shedeur is on the field. The psychological shift was palpable. The aura of elite talent shattered, replaced by a predatory consensus among defensive units across the league. When veteran reporters confirmed that Buffalo's defensive backs were actively calling out the short routes before the ball was even snapped, it revealed that Shedeur's pre-snap telegraphing and post-snap processing were running dangerously behind NFL speed. The afternoon in Berea did not just create a viral moment, it ignited an existential crisis surrounding the young quarterback's ability to drive the football downfield and earn the baseline respect of professional defenses. When analysts put the practice tape into slow motion, the fundamental mechanical issues surrounding Shedeur Sanders transformed from ambient field chatter into a stark, cold breakdown of physical limitations. The video footage from the joint practice reveals a sequence of subtle microflaws that compound into a massive structural problem every time he drops back to pass. First is his footwork. Instead of driving through his back heel to transfer core power into his throws, Shedeur exhibits a lingering tendency to hop at the top of his drop, resetting his base a split second too late. This microscopic delay throws off the precise timing of the route concept, causing his arm to compensate by pushing the ball rather than snapping it off through a clean kinetic chain. As a result, his throwing release looks undeniably elongated, swinging out wide rather than staying tight to his ear, which severely diminishes his deep ball velocity. Ball placement that was forgiving against collegiate defensive backs becomes instantly vulnerable against elite NFL secondary play, turning potential hole shots into fluttering sails that hover harmlessly in the air. Buffalo's defensive secondary didn't need high-powered telemetry to spot these mechanical hitches. They saw them developing in real time and adjusted their scheme with disrespectful aggression. The video breakdowns highlight Buffalo's safeties, creeping closer and closer to the line of scrimmage with every rep, completely flattening the deep third of the field. When a defense no longer respects a quarterback's vertical threat, their safety alignment shifts dramatically. The single high safety drops from 16 yards deep to 12, and the nickel backs sit heavily on intermediate breaks, completely jumping short out routes and hitches. The Bills' defense effectively built a wall inside 10 yards, daring Shedeur to throw over their heads into the voided space behind them. Yet, time and again, the film shows the young caller refusing to take the bait, opting instead to funnel the ball downward into congested underneath coverage. By abandoning the vertical game, he allowed Buffalo's front seven to pin their ears back, compress the pocket, and squeeze the offensive passing lanes into micro-fractions of space. This refusal to attack deep points directly to an entrenched, risk-averse processing habit that has scouts and film analysts deeply divided. On one hand, protecting the football and avoiding catastrophic turnovers is a hallmark of intelligent quarterback play. On the other, an over-reliance on safety valves turns an offense into a predictable, low-explosivity machine. When Shedeur senses pressure or sees his primary vertical option contested, his immediate instinct is to dump the ball off early rather than navigating the pocket to let a deeper route develop. Film analysts point out that while this habit, padding his statistical completion percentage and keeps interception numbers low, it systematically kills the team's ability to create dynamic plays downfield. Holding the ball too long while refusing to pull the trigger on tight vertical windows creates a cascading failure across the entire offense. Offensive linemen are forced to sustain blocks longer. Receivers grow frustrated after running unrewarded clearing routes, and drive after drive stalls out in third and medium scenarios where defensive coordinators can effortlessly lock down the short sticks. The humiliating joint practice in Berea did not occur in a vacuum. It was the direct aftermath of a grim preseason opener in Chicago that had already begun chipping away at Shedeur Sanders' standing. When the Browns stumbled into Soldier Field and collapsed in a 34-10 loss to the Bears, the scoreboard only told half the story. Entering the third quarter cold to split reps in an active quarterback competition, Shedeur managed a tepid 6 of 11 passing performance for just 79 yards, capped off by an ugly fourth-quarter interception. The stat line reflected an offense grinding to a halt, incapable of sustaining momentum or punishing a basic defensive look. Every time he stepped into the pocket in Chicago, the same creeping hesitancy that would later trigger Buffalo's taunts was already on full display, converting potential scoring drives into empty possessions and giving the football world its first real look at his professional growing pains. Yet, the frustration of that Chicago performance lies in the tantalizing flashes of elite talent that were instantly drowned out by routine failures. On a critical 3rd and 13 from his own end, Shedeur stood tall against a blitz, uncorking a gorgeous high-velocity 35-yard strike down the seam to tight end Luke Floriea that pushed Cleveland straight inside the 5-yard line. It was a throw of supreme confidence and arm talent, the exact type of play that defined his collegiate stardom. But what followed was a microcosm of his current professional crisis. 4 consecutive plays at the goal line failed to reach the end zone, ending in a brutal 4th and 1 stuff that turned the ball over on downs. The flash of brilliance was immediately erased by a series of stalled drives, checkdowns short of the line to gain, and an air-mailed throw over the middle that landed straight into the arms of Chicago's secondary. Those tape markers from Soldier Field provided the exact baseline that defensive coordinators across the NFL were waiting to analyze. The Chicago tape proved that if a defense takes away his initial pre-snap read and rotates a safety down, Shedeur will consistently decline to challenge the deep single coverage on the outside, opting instead to check the ball down into predetermined coverage traps. Opposing defensive strategists quickly realized that by deploying aggressive zero-blitz looks or baiting him with soft underneath coverage, they could force him into processing delays that lead directly to high-risk throws or dead-end field positions. By the time the team returned home to face Buffalo in practice, the rest of the league already possessed a comprehensive scouting report. The mockery in Berea wasn't an isolated event. It was the inevitable echo of a game plan that Chicago had already exposed, signaling that the entire NFL was now actively baiting the rookie into Checkdown City. Inside the Browns' meeting rooms, Todd Monken's offensive framework demands a quarterback willing to attack intermediate and deep windows with fearless anticipation. Monken's philosophy hinges on creating chunk plays of verticality and forcing safeties to defend the entire field, placing a heavy premium on arm talent, deep ball trajectory, and spatial aggression. The emergence of Shedeur Sanders' Checkdown City reputation presents an immediate operational conflict for the coaching staff. Monken's system cannot function with a passive facilitator who turns every intermediate drop back into a 3-yard dump-off. A game manager who avoids disaster plays might protect the football, but in a division packed with high-powered offenses, playing safe is a slow death. The coaches are faced with a stark choice: force Shedeur to throw into contested vertical lanes, risking turnover-heavy growing pains, or dial back the offense to fit his current check-down comfort zone, ultimately neutering the scheme's explosive potential. This tactical friction is spilling directly into a high-stakes quarterback room dynamic, threatening to fracture team chemistry. Deshaun Watson, despite his own career turbulence, represents a veteran presence who understands the speed and risk profile of an NFL offense. Watching a rookie swallow the ball or settle for underneath outlets while opponents openly mock the team creates an unspoken divide among the position group. Wide receivers, whose career incentives and on-field output depend on a quarterback driving the ball downfield, inevitably grow frustrated when vertical routes are repeatedly ignored in favor of late safety valve releases. When opponents openly laugh at your starting passing attack during joint practices, that disrespect filters through the entire locker room, forcing receivers and linemen to answer for a passing game that looks completely disarmed. This psychological toll of outside mockery from opposing defenders creates a pressure cooker for a young quarterback accustomed to complete control over his public narrative. In college, Shedeur operated with an unshakable aura, but the NFL environment is unforgivingly transactional. When opposing defensive backs celebrate over short completions and scream taunts that trend across every sports network, it tests a rookie's mental fortitude to its absolute limit. The danger for Shedeur isn't just a physical limitation on tape, it's the mental compounding effect, the risk that the constant noise will make him even more hesitant, pushing him deeper into his shell and turning a temporary mechanical hitch into a permanent psychological scar. Silencing the league requires more than defensive adjustments. It demands a total transformation of how Shedeur Sanders processes an NFL defense in real time. To escape the gravity of Checkdown City, Shedeur must execute a precise, fundamental blueprint in his upcoming preseason starts, beginning with an unwavering commitment to his drop-back depth and field vision. Rather than resetting his feet multiple times at the top of his drop, he must plant his back foot, step into his throws with structural authority, and trust his offensive line long enough to let intermediate crossers and deep post routes develop. The physical tools that turned him into a college star haven't vanished, but unleashing them requires firing the ball into tight windows before a receiver even executes his final break. By attacking the intermediate spaces, the 12 to 18-yard zones where NFL defenses are built to suffocate timid passers, he can immediately push safeties back, relieve pressure on the running game, and prove that his arm strength can push professional coverage units off the line of scrimmage. This upcoming preseason stretch represents far more than an exhibition opportunity. It is a high-stakes, career-defining crossroad for the rookie quarterback. The blueprint for redemption is clear, but executing it under the intense scrutiny of a national spotlight is where reputations are permanently forged or broken. If Shedeur continues to tuck and dump, surrendering to the relentless taunts of opposing defenses and settling for low-risk, short-yardage outcomes, he risks cementing himself as a backup-caliber game manager before his career even reaches autumn. But if he responds to the humiliation by ripping vertical throws downfield, standing tall in collapsing pockets, and aggressively driving the offense past the line to gain, he can instantly shift the narrative from viral mockery to elite potential. The moment of truth has arrived, leaving no room for hesitation. Shedeur Sanders will either step up and forcefully silence his loudest critics or remain permanently trapped in Checkdown City.